Here is something nobody in school, no financial advisor, no bank, and no government program will ever tell you directly. The middle class is not struggling because they are lazy. They are not failing because they're stupid. They are stuck because the entire financial system was quietly designed to keep them exactly where they are. Comfortable enough not to revolt. Broke enough never to escape. And the worst part? Most of them are working harder than ever, doing everything they were told to do, and still falling further behind every single year. This is not a motivation video. This is an explanation. Picture a typical American family. 2 incomes. A decent house in the suburbs. Car payments, a 401k, maybe a vacation every other summer. On paper, they look fine. But ask them privately, and they will tell you they are one layoff, one medical bill, or one bad month away from real trouble. That is not poverty, but it is not wealth either. It is a treadmill, and the speed keeps increasing. According to Federal Reserve data, the bottom 50% of Americans hold less than 3% of the country's total wealth. But here is what makes this more disturbing. The people running that treadmill the hardest are not the bottom 50. They're the middle. The teachers, the nurses, the mid-level managers, the small business owners. The people who genuinely believed that if they followed the rules, the system would reward them. It did not. And there is a specific reason why. To understand why the middle class never truly gets ahead, you have to understand one fundamental concept that separates the wealthy from everyone else. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is what your money is doing while you sleep. The wealthy do not just earn money. They own things that earn money for them. Businesses, real estate, stocks, intellectual property. The middle class, by contrast, earns money through time. They trade hours for dollars. And no matter how many hours they work, there are only 24 in a day. This is the core trap. And it gets worse. When a middle-class family earns more money, something predictable happens. They buy a bigger house, a newer car, a better vacation. Economists call this lifestyle inflation. Robert Kiyosaki called it the rat race. The point is the same. Every time income rises, expenses rise to match it. And the gap between earning and building wealth stays exactly the same. Now, layer on top of that the way the American tax system actually works. A salaried employee earning $90,000 a year pays income tax before they see a single dollar. Payroll taxes come out automatically. Then they spend what is left, often on things that depreciate the moment they are purchased. A car loses value the second it leaves the lot. A new iPhone is worth less in 6 months. Consumer spending, which is what most of the middle class does with their money, is a one-way door. Meanwhile, a business owner or an investor operates inside a completely different tax structure. They earn, then they spend on business expenses, then they pay taxes on what remains. They write off cars, travel, equipment, and real estate. They build assets that appreciate. They pay capital gains rates instead of income tax rates, and those rates are significantly lower. Same country, same economy. 2 completely different financial realities. This is where it gets uncomfortable. The middle class was not an accident of history. It was a deliberate creation. After World War II, American corporations needed consumers. Millions of workers who would buy refrigerators, cars, televisions, and houses on credit. A middle class with stable jobs and rising wages was the engine of economic growth. But it was always meant to be a consuming class, not an ownership class. Banks understood this early. A mortgage is not just a product that helps you own a home. It is a 30-year financial commitment that keeps a family's largest asset functioning more like a liability for the first 2 decades. You pay mostly interest. You build very little equity. And if you move, which most Americans do every 7 years, you often start the cycle over. Credit cards operate on the same logic. They are not designed to help you manage money. They are designed to monetize impatience, to allow you to consume now and pay later at interest rates that would have been considered predatory in any previous era of American history. And then there is the most psychologically devastating trap of all: status. The middle class in America does not just spend money to survive. They spend money to signal. A certain car, a certain neighborhood, a certain school district, a certain wardrobe. These are not luxury choices. They feel like survival choices because in a status-driven culture, falling behind your peer group feels like genuine failure. And so people spend money they do not have to impress people they barely know, to maintain a lifestyle that is slowly drowning them. The wealthy, interestingly, often live far below what they could afford. Extensive research by Thomas Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door, found that most actual millionaires drive used cars, live in modest homes, and avoid visible displays of wealth. They are rich not because they spend more. They are rich because they chose ownership over appearance every single time. So, what does the escape actually look like? Because there is one. It is not easy, but it is real. The first shift is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, not as accounting terms, but as life philosophy. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. Your car is a liability. Your mortgage, for most of its life, is a liability. A rental property that covers its own costs and generates income is an asset. Stocks that compound over decades are assets. A business that generates revenue without requiring your hourly presence is an asset. The question is not how much you earn. The question is how much of what you earn goes toward acquiring things that grow in value or generate income, versus things that cost you money the moment you buy them. The second shift is tax literacy. This is not about loopholes or schemes. It is about understanding that the tax code in America was written by people who own businesses, for people who own businesses. Becoming an informed participant in your own financial life means understanding how different income types are taxed and structuring your financial decisions accordingly. A conversation with a real CPA who works with investors and business owners is worth more than any financial influencer on the internet. The third shift is the hardest, and it is psychological. You have to become comfortable looking less successful than you are. The middle-class trap is partly a performance trap. Breaking out of it requires the quiet confidence to invest in your future rather than perform your present. To drive the used car, to skip the vacation, to put the raise into index funds instead of a higher mortgage payment. Not forever, but long enough for compounding to do what time and patience always do. The wealthy do not have a secret. They have a timeline. They think in decades. The middle class, under constant financial pressure, often thinks in months. Changing that timeline, even slightly, changes everything. Here is the final thought, and it is worth sitting with. The middle class was promised a deal. Work hard, stay loyal, spend consistently, and you will be taken care of. For one generation, that deal mostly held. For every generation since, it has quietly unraveled. The companies are not loyal. The pensions are gone. The housing market has outpaced wages for 30 years. And the cost of healthcare, education, and childcare has turned what used to be manageable into genuinely impossible for millions of families who are doing everything right by the old playbook. This is not about blame. It is about clarity. Because the first step to changing your financial life is seeing the system clearly, without the comfortable illusions that keep most people in place. The middle class does not stay broke because they failed. They stay broke because they were never fully told the rules of the game they were playing. Now you know. What you do with that is the only thing that matters.